We'd like to call the meeting to order. Oops, is this going?
Yeah.
At 5:05. And the first item is to go over the budget review. Giovanna.
Hi, Giovanna Neal, Accounting Director. I'm going to go over some of our budgets for 2023. What we have on the agenda today are the BSR 2 fund, which is our Bike, Sidewalk, Recreation, and Roads Fund. Also the debt fund, that's our bond fund. The Building Department Fund, Hydro Station Fund, and the American Rescue Plan Act Fund. So I'll begin with the BSR 2 fund, which is the Bike, Sidewalk, Recreation, and Roads. It's number 213, our fund. We number our funds, so this is number 213. We actually already went over this fund. However, in September, the board approved some grants, CDBG grants for some projects. They may not have been, they were not CDBG grants, they were park grants. So I did put those in here, and those, I did just want to go over it real quickly because it did change quite a few things. So the revenue, we'll wait till it comes up so you can see where we're at. Okay, so I just wanted to point out the revenue here, and it is, part of it is a CDBG grant, and part of it was a state parks grant. So if you look on the column furthest to the right, the 318,201 was the CDBG grant we'll be getting in. And that was for the Apple Ridge Park Playground improvements. That was approved in September. And then the $298,700 was a DNR Parks grant that we received for the community center park. So I wanted, since it was over 500,000, I wanted to actually just kind of go over that real quickly. So I put the revenue in here. We have some matching grants. You'll see the appropriated prior funds. That's the last line in the revenue that we did not have anything before, and now I had to put $240,628. That's our matching for the grants. And then to coincide with those revenues, we had to put the expenditures in. And those are in the capital asset portion, which is the 213901. Should be close to the last page, or the second to the last page. And you can see here we've actually put in Apple Ridge Park improvement for the $318,201, and for the Clubview Park improvement at $272,000. We did actually approve a small portion for expenditure in 22 for the design and the bids for the engineer, and that was approved again by the board, but that's in 22, and we did a budget amendment on that as well that was approved. So does anybody have any questions? I just wanted to bring that forward since it was such a big change. All right. So there's no questions on that. Again, it's just a kind of a review of the review. So, all right. So we move on to our debt fund. That's our bond debt fund. That's our infrastructure bond that we had done back, the bond was done back in 2006. It was for the infrastructure of the Bozel, or the Seaver Farms land that the township owns. It was to do the roads, water, sewer, all the lines in through there. And then that also went along with a LDFA grant that LDFA for the taxes that was withheld and used to pay for the bond. I started to go over this last meeting, and we just didn't have time to do that. There might have been some questions on the bond. But as far as what we were having coming over from the LDFA was only the $71,083, and we needed from the general fund $163,067 in order to pay the principal and interest. So hopefully, as we get more buildings in that LDFA section of the Seaver Farms, we'll be able to bring more in to help pay the bond debt. The total of the bond was $3.2 million. Then that was back in 2006, and it was used again for the capital infrastructure. And then the LDFA capture that was supposed to happen with Bozel, that was the only one that we had over there. Bozel was the only manufacturer, only thing that was over in that section that we were capturing on. So, and they have actually sold that. That is now, let's see, is it underground printing? I'm sorry. Underground printing is there now, so.
And the township property is also in the LDFA? So if lots are sold off, then that would
generate
help, so people, we wouldn't have to contribute from the general fund for the bond.
I know we've probably discussed this before, but from the transfer of property that underground printing has, will that make up any property taxes that we lost with Bozel?
No, not yet.
Okay.
No, because you have the real and then you have the personal property. So the real property is pretty much this, almost the same.
Yeah.
But the personal property is what we were getting the most off of the LDFA from. And that actually, when they sold, everything was moved out of the building. So then you've lost the personal property.
Yeah,
So once they start doing things in the building and improving in the building, then we can, have taxes there. But
okay, because printing uses machinery and equipment, but maybe it's not as much as an auto supply.
yeah, and our assessors go out and they do that. They put that value on there. That's something they would do. And they just turned this around in February of '22. So
Okay. So there's a possibility of recapturing something.
more. I mean, we'll still get around this 71,000 unless things, there's improvements in there.
Okay.
And then the actual bond itself is, maturity on that is 2029. Is there any other questions?
Joe, this is the only debt we have, right?
That is correct. Yeah, we just paid off our road bond. So that $6 million road bond was just paid off this year. So.
I knew something had expired this year.
Yes.
Yeah.
So. All right, our next fund is our building fund. That's Fund 249. I do have Dave Bellers is with us today, so if we have any questions, he's here to help answer any. I don't see any major changes. The only change would be that we had one of our full-time gentlemen left us and went and moved on. And so now we're trying to do contract people to make up for that loss, and inspections. I'm sorry, I should have explained that, for inspections. So does anyone have any specific questions?
And we really don't know what's going to happen with the economy. So this budget is based a lot on what happened last year, but there are some other things and a lot of interest that we've had meetings on. So hopefully they'll become reality, and then that will help this budget as well. So we don't have enough for full-time inspections, so we contract for, is it mechanical? Mechanical, is that plumbing, one of them?
Plumbing and electrical.
Plumbing and electrical, okay. Any questions on that? No question. We move on.
It's got a green light. Oh, there we go. All right, so there is no questions for,
This is based on our building.
I'm sorry, you,
This was based on our building and the adjustments we were trying to make as far as the court.
This is revenue for like building permits and stuff?
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're right, it is cyclical because depending on the number of projects
Right.
based on the economy.
Like a lot of people aren't building because it's 30, 40% more and they can't get supplies. But we still had a pretty good year, you know, in spite of that. I know American Center for Mobility, there's another hotel that's looking to come. The Healing Center, which is a cancer, a place where people can go in a safe area, a clean environment, and they can be with their family, and potential grocery store. We've had two interest in the marijuana district, or the green district, whatever we call it. So, I mean, there are people still interested. ONW is interested in expanding. So, you know, we got an inquiry for Huron Street, moving a business from Milan potentially here. So there's still a lot going on. So it's good to know that people want to develop in Ypsilanti Township, you know. That's good.
okay. If no one has any questions, we'll move on to our next fund, which is our Hydro Fund. It's Fund 252. We do have Mike Sarin in here today. If we have any questions specific for him, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer any. Just trying to look to see.
Joe,
The big projects.
yes, there's two big projects in here, correct?
Yeah, we have two big projects, and I'll let Mike go ahead and talk about his projects.
All right, there we go. Good evening. So in the 2023 budget, the only significant change is the $500,000 for the sluice gate structural inspection and some concrete repairs for around the fixed arches and the abutments to the dam. That is going to be a 2023 summer project. We're going through the bid spec now with Bar Engineering and hopefully bringing that back to the board to go out to bid either in late December or first of the year. So it is probably a 6 to 8 week project.
And it's about $500,000, correct?
$500,000. That's what we're budgeting. We're hoping that it hits target. We've adjusted it already twice because of the market. So
And you've also submitted for ARPA, to the ARPA committee.
we have submitted to the ARPA fund 2 projects, this one in particularly, and also safety signage and safety devices around the dam. And that was a project about $50,000.
All right. And Mike, I just want to just say something here. If when the gates are closed down, when they're doing this project, that means we're not producing energy, or do we still produce energy?
It's going to be a combination. There'll be a week or 2 where the generation will be turned off so they can fix the concrete. And then when that work is complete, we'll move to the sluice gates, and we can't take all of them out. We only have 2 bulkheads, so we'll be like jumping from one gate to the next. So that process, we only can do probably 1 gate every day or every other day, depending on how fast it takes to get the crane, the divers in place, and then work platforms, structural engineers all in place, and the laborers. So it's a quite involved process for a structural report. So, and if it's found that those gates or a gate needs to be further investigated, we'll have to come up with a contingency plan on what to do with that. So I'm hoping, I'm crossing my fingers for a good health report.
Question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Trustee Newman? Oh, yeah.
Once these projects are completed, about how long will they be in existence before needing any other repairs or?
I honestly couldn't tell you the life cycle of a cast iron gate. Since one of the reasons why we're doing this is since we don't have structural drawings of those gates, and I don't know if the township ever received them when it was deeded to the township. So that's one of them that the engineers will be looking at, is how are they built and what is the safety factor, where that way can determine in today's standards. So dams have been around for over 100, 150 years in one location. So it just depends on conditions and general upkeep. So we have not had any significant problems with those gates. We've had to make some adjustments on them over the years, but since in my 22 years, nothing significant has occurred that would require any kind of replacement. Back in 2000, 3 of the gates were removed and new seals were put on. They had mixed reviews on that project, but overall at that time there was nothing identified that there was any reason to consider anything, any replacement. So nothing then was flagged.
So we would be looking at, outside of, I guess my concern would be how often would we need the 560,000?
So as dams get older, it gets expensive. We will be commonly, and that's something I've already kind of started thinking about, what if scenarios and long-term planning, because our current license ends in 33. Our power contract ends in 27. So here now going into 2023, I figured we'll be talking with Edison and getting a scope of potential contract for the future. That'll help drive conversations and decision-making for the future. So I think one of the things that it's in the back of my mind, if in the case of Ford Lake being so deep and have high bluffs, it's going to be a long process to determine what the hydraulic change would be for the future. You know, if at some point the dam is ever removed, how that would look like and a number to that. In some cases, it's cheaper to maintain the dam than to remove them. So that is something that is in the back of my mind already.
Thank you.
But our dam actually creates electricity, which there's a lot of dams that are removed that don't create, they don't generate electricity, but we also have invested for, 30 years into the hydro station to make sure that whatever you need, whatever you think we need, that we've always invested in it to take care, make sure the structure is sound. I would like to point out that in here, of the 500,000, part of it is repairing the spalling concrete.
Correct.
So how much of the 500,000 is the spalling?
About half.
Okay. And that's the first time we've done that.
We did it about 20 years ago. So in some areas adjacent to what we're planning on doing in 2023 were repaired 20 years ago. So there is, I think there'll be future projects. We haven't touched the exterior of the powerhouse since I've been there, and I don't think anyone has. So that one there is on my radar for a future project. The windows are original from the 30s, and some of them are starting to warp. So that one there is on the historic side. So that one there, we try to capture some funds through grants through historic properties. So there's work to be done. So yeah, there's just continuing maintenance there. So.
Mike, I just want to say what a great job you do there.
Well, it makes it easy when you love it.
But we really appreciate it, and I know residents who have toured it and employees are just shocked at how clean it is and how historic the building is as well, so.
Yeah, and so this past 2 weeks, we've started a couple projects, and we're finishing up, we're now just finished up our Lake Buoy safety line. So that project's wrapped up, so we'll deploy the new buoys in the lake in the spring. We also started our sluice gate automation project that started. So we'll be having the computers to help regulate some of those flows in the springtime, or if the units trip offline from a storm or Edison problems, the gates will kind of pick up and take off so we can maintain our run-on-river compliance. So that is ongoing. We also had a tour of fifth-year apprentice electricians this week, so they got a chance to tour the hydro as part of their class. So that was a nice thing. We had a surprise visitor from Ypsilanti, Mr. Dave Wheeler. So he was part of the project when Gyro had it. He helped with Bob Mannion and some of his work there that they did. So that was a nice little surprise for him to stop in and talk. So
That name's familiar.
And Mike
And we
is-
also required to give some dollars to the city as part of the Gyro
yes,
settlement.
right. That's great. And I don't remember the termination on that. It was quite substantial in the years, but 10% of the gross revenue is sent to the city as part of that judgment. And I think Attorney Winters can give more detail on the backstory of that with land transfers and all that at that time. So,
and the-
Two-thirds of the way through. I know that
Yeah.
it was 50 years.
yeah, it's a while.
yeah, I don't know if there was a dollar cap or not. I don't remember that part. Yeah.
It was 10%. And if you see the revenue that's on there now, it's the line that has, it's the first line that has the big amounts all through it, the 567,870. That's the revenues generated from the electricity. That's what we get for that. And we do have to pay 10% of that to the city.
After expenses for Ford Lake Park?
No, that's 10% of that.
I think it's gross.
Is it gross?
Yeah, whenever we see the invoice from Edison or the statement, we 10% of that. So, right off the top.
So any more
All right,
questions?
any other questions?
Just a statement. One of the reasons I was asking about the length of time is, well, based on the ARPA committee, I was just thinking of, that would be something to use the funds for because of the longevity of the projects. Because once a repair is made or equipment purchase is made, it's for a long time. So that's what I was looking at. But, of course, that's up to the committee as well.
So we did have to decommission one of the small dams that we have.
Tyler.
To me, it looks like a hump. I mean, it didn't look like our big dam. It just looked like a hump. And I believe that was close to 3.2 million
Yeah, it was a lot.
to decommission a hump.
And that was a partial, that was a dewatering, that wasn't even removing the structure.
So I just kind of give you some idea of how much those things cost. It really didn't seem like a big project, but it was very involved. for
We
something
actually
so
deeded
little.
that to the Drain Commission, right?
I think that was the intention. That wasn't my part of the project.
All right. there any other questions? We'll move on to the American Rescue Plan Act Fund. The only thing that I want to just stress on this is it's a little different because you don't see the full amount of the 9 million in here, because usually with a grant, you don't recognize the revenue until you have an expenditure. So those are put in a deferred revenue, which is on the balance sheet side, so you don't see that on a revenue and expenditure until it's time to recognize the expenditure, and then you recognize the amount of revenue for that expenditure. So this is a little bit different. And so the only expenditures we've had so far are this year for just PPE, and that we've spent so far almost close to $195,000. So that's all we've really used out of the full ARPA funds. We're still waiting to designate what we're going to be using that for. So does anyone have any questions? Like I said, this is a little tricky because it's not showing you in this revenue and expenditures the full amount. So once there's decisions made, it depends on what year. And then what we'll do is we'll budget the expenditure, and then we'll budget the revenue. We'll pull it from the deferred and budget it in appropriate lines here. Is that?
So looking at this, just looking at this, for the requested budget for '23, we haven't budgeted any ARPA money?
No. All I did was I did the appropriated from prior year fund balance, because we actually have a fund balance. It's just, it's deferred. It's just, so.
So we have everything except 190, whatever, thousand available.
Right. So what happened is in '22, in January, I believe it was January, the board approved $900,000 to be used to purchase PPE and tests and, stuff of that nature, masks, for our community. And we've only spent, like I said, pretty close. I just kind of, it's what, 192,802 right now, and I think we ordered some more tests recently. But anyway, so what I did for '23 is of that 900 that was approved, I just rolled the 600 over in case we needed more for that project, since that was what was approved, that spending. Whether we spend that or not, things may slow down. Hopefully, that would be perfect if we don't need any more tests or masks or things to pass out, but we want to be able to do that for our community, our residents. So that's the only thing that's in here.
Thank you.
Any questions? Everybody all right? All right, that's all I have for today. I think we'll finish up next meeting. We've got 4 or 5 more funds next meeting to follow up on. And then we'll go out to the public.
Will one of those funds be the sheriff?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think we have court, 14B District Court, we have the sheriff, we have the smaller nuisance fund that is really a net zero, because we go out and if we have to board up something, we charge for that, or if we have to cut weeds for a resident, we charge for that. So that's almost like, it's just a really small, that's a very small one. So we have that one.
That's it, and police
the
and
3.
court.
Yeah.
And,
I thought we-
actually, John was helping me get the numbers for the new costs of our PSU police service unit. And so it's a 4%, I think it was 4,
Yeah, it's 4, I have to look at it.
4.5 or something like that. So, 4% of.
And they actually,
million
they
is a
gave
lot of
us
money.
2 numbers, so they're going out for a grant, not a grant, a millage, correct? Or is it a grant? They will find out soon, so I wanted to put that one off so I could see if they actually got the grant, or, I didn't understand what
This
they were.
year, in the memo that John was able to get, the sheriff was saying that we have to apply for grants from the millage fund that was approved in 2018. So I don't have clarity on that.
Yeah, it was a little different for me, too.
My concern is, and I want to make sure that the county is still supportive of police services, because we're not the only contract community that depends on it, and that they allocate resources for the police department. My concern is if they do it only from the millage, and if the millage fails, then what does that mean for us? So there's a lot of questions that need to be asked. And John, I'm not sure if you were able to get all the detail. We're looking for detailed analysis on how they arrived at the PSU. It's like $200,000.
Yeah, so that's good. That's why we kind of put that one off a little bit, so we could see if we could get some more clarity on that memo they sent. They didn't really send a contract. They sent a memo.
Yeah.
I've asked a couple times to no avail, so I guess I'll just keep emailing and getting no response.
Yes, please. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't,
Yeah.
but if there's no further questions?
Madam Chair, that millage is up next year, right? 5-year millage?
I think it was, Jimmy. I think it,
So maybe, Heather, you will have an election next year,
6, yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm not, the issue I have with that is not only I'm concerned about not funding, police services at a county level, but I'm concerned that if that millage doesn't pass, but when they allocated funds to build a $6 million dispatch unit, they didn't say we had to apply for a grant. So I just would like more clarity on that. And that millage money, 35% went to, if you had your own police department, then you received funds from the millage funds directly for like City of Ann Arbor, Pittsfield Township, Ypsi City, Chelsea, and Saline. So they received money direct from that millage, whereas the townships, that contract did not. We did not get any money from that. So the other 35% was for mental health, and then 35% was for police services. So it's just kind of, I think it's important that we have clarity on the record. We definitely need to have the detail. I mean, you can't come up with a $200,000 PSU cost without having the backup or how you arrived at that. So we do want to get that. Maybe I'll go to a board meeting and ask them for it and just, I don't know how.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I would just like to add and share with the board that we met this week on an unrelated issue, but Sheriff Clayton was in attendance, and Supervisor Stumbo was just asking for clarification around this thing, and it was just like, you would have thought, it just would, like, the answer wasn't given, and the response, I was very concerned about how the sheriff spoke to Supervisor Stumbo in just a very defensive way around the finances of things, and like, we should be always transparent with our finances, and so I just have a lot of concerns about that. So please keep trying, John, and after November 9th, let me know how I can help.
That's why we waited for that to be the last one, though.
Well, just a point of clarification, I believe you've been asking for information for longer than just the past couple meetings, right? You've been asking, this isn't the first time you've asked for clarity around the costs. You've been asking for clarity for longer than one meeting.
Yeah, well, I asked, correct. I've been asking since May for the cost. Because the contract with the PSU expires at the end of 12/31 of this year, just for budget purposes, and we budgeted 1.5, so we were way off. We'll have to adjust that, but you're correct. But now that we have a number, we wanted just a detail of that actual cost, and we can't get that. John's been trying, so I'm gonna try too. I think the sheriff's department is separate from the county. So usually Greg Dill, we can just get it from him, but I think the sheriff's department is that right, John? It's a separate department and operates separately, kind of. Okay. Okay. So we will continue to ask.
All right, thank you.
Anyone knows anybody, we welcome them asking as well, so John and I, any pressure would be great. Yes,
Is that backed up by a paper trail when you ask?
by a what?
A paper trail? Is that in writing or just in meetings?
No, the only thing we have is a memo, and it had the percentages, but
I mean, but I'm saying when you.
in the past, we've been able to
Do you sit on a
get it.
special committee with them or something? No. You're just sending out a request, an email? Yeah, when I send an email, Okay. And no response? That's what I'm wondering. Mhm. Mhm. That's what I'm asking, is it
Okay.
paper trail as a written response back? You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
If someone's sending.
Yeah, there's a few emails
And
going.
there's nothing in response by a paper trail, it proves that you have requested many.
Okay. It's substantial. 4% is substantial. It's over $200,000 if it was a $5 million contract. And we are going to do contract for 35 instead of 38 because they can't fill it and haven't been able to. And that might end up being a blessing if our costs are going up like that, So I don't know if the grant money was used in the past. So all of a sudden, we have to ask for grant dollars from the public safety millage, whereas it's been in existence since 2018, so did we receive any grants for that? I really have more questions than answers. We'll get them, though. We will get them.
So the current contract ends when?
12/31.
When?
12/31, December of this year.
Oh, so we don't know exactly, does the fee, or like an increase, let me see how to phrase this. So the contract, like every other time when we look at contracts, the attorney has to review the contract. Is this the same kind of, like, we'd have to see the contract, or is it just that there's a cost difference and the contract stays the same?
Yeah, there is a substantial, it was 1.5% and it's 4.5%. So that's a lot for.
Right, but does it get reviewed again, or is it just like we have a contract with them to provide services and then
It goes.
the amount of what the cost might be is different, or does the attorney review this again, like the contract itself?
What was suggested via email was that we do a contract extension
Okay,
and just increase it to the new amounts. So what we want is, okay, it increased, I can understand that. Show us the numbers. That's the numbers, the backup data for how you arrived at that cost for personnel, what's your healthcare costs, your vehicle costs, liability and, equipment. And
because if we're gonna possibly think about fewer deputies, and that's gonna change the contract too, it's gonna be more than, I'm just trying to understand, like, how this happens, like, when the contract expires, then it just seems like a really short time frame when our preference is to have attorneys review contracts to understand that, and we're looking at less than 2 months at this point right now, which seems concerning, especially given recently the concerns that residents are bringing to us are heavily connected to our police contracts and things that they're worried about happening in their neighborhood the last 2 meetings. So I'm just concerned that it doesn't leave us a lot of time. And then I've got more questions now that if we have to apply for grants, I don't understand how that's set up, because if money came in and then money was distributed back out with the understanding that you had your own department, like, do people pay for dispatch? Because I'm thinking more departments use dispatch. I just have a lot of questions about that, and it seems like usually quick timeframes aren't always great at creating a sense of understanding and transparency. And so I think we want that and we need that because public safety is something that residents are concerned
agree.
about.
Yeah.
So I don't understand such a short term. I don't understand that at all.
It's scheduled to go on the County Board of Commissioners. I think it was November 18th, is that correct? That's what the memo from Sheriff Clayton said, and I did ask to have a meeting on it.
Yeah. They gave what they were going to submit to the board as a resolution. It had numbers, but it didn't have any backup. So we want the backup.
So what's going on there, November 18th meeting? The actual,
They're taking their resolution before the board, which what they're taking before the board does not have any backup. It's just this percentage each year and what they're asking for and supplying services to the various townships to the various townships. And justifying when like the economic impact, justifying their services. And they did single out the Ypsilanti Township as being township of need. And they singled out, when it says opportunity index, and Brenda saw it too. Yeah, it was not.
No.
It just, when they say impact on opportunity index, and they talked about how the sheriff services Ypsilanti Township and how it has a lot of crime, and, they singled that out as to one of their reasons in answering the questions, which, they service other townships as well.
A lot of other white.
But, so, that was.
So is the resolution public knowledge?
It's not a resolution yet, so it's being submitted to the commission, the board for their approval. Oh, the resolution is being submitted to the board for approval on November the 18th. So I'm not sure if that's public information
Okay.
by not being approved yet.
I appreciate John trying to help us. He did get a hold of the memo, so that was helpful to ask more questions.
Helpful, but concerning.
Very, but I'm trying.
Yeah, I'm gonna track this, patience.
I should have emailed it to myself from the county, but, so then everyone could look at it. And I still can, just email it to everyone in the township, on the township board. So you could understand what we're talking about.
All right. Sorry to get off track there. Did you bring the proclamation? Did everyone sign it? Yeah. We have the proclamation that was in the packet. We corrected on one of the trustees' names, but we want everyone to sign it. And yeah, but it's right here too. A gentleman who's also a resident that works in dispatch actually went across the street and pulled someone out of a burning house. Yeah, so we thought we would recognize and show our appreciation for that. Are there questions on the consent agenda? Does everyone want to give me a raise of $1 million? So does everyone agree? Okay. I would just wonder if there was a consent agenda. Any questions on the consent agenda? Attorney's report, you want to give it now or at the meeting?
Wait till you get through your work session, maybe.
Okay. Under old business, we have the request to increase golf rates at Green Oaks Golf Course for the 2023 golf season. This was tabled, and Heather and Stan met with Kirk Sherwood, and we'd have to remove it from table and then provide any update.
So moved.
We're in a work session.
Sorry. I'm multitasking.
He's, that was for the regular meeting, but Stan, did you want to update on the meeting that you had and everyone's comfortable with?
Yeah, Heather, myself, Mike Hoffmeister met with Kurt roughly a week ago. He went over the information as to why he has the increases and the additions for the non-resident senior rate. I think the three of us left the meeting comfortable with that explanation and didn't have any further questions on it. These increases still will make Green Oaks the most affordable course in our area, our region. And so the hope is that it will increase some of the playable rounds moving forward. So I think I got it all, Kurt.
Any questions from Kurt, for Kurt? All right. The next item under old business is proposal from Communication Square for the design, licensing, support, and migration services for Office 365. We have talked to Travis about this, and we do not think it's going to happen this year, so of course it'll be contingent upon attorney review of the very thick contract that we have, and then we have a total amount.
It'll be an amount not to exceed, please, someone, if, I've done the math twice, but if you want to check too, $145,400 is the total not to exceed amount. And so we'll put that in our motion. The reason that the actual motion on the agenda wasn't changed is because it was tabled at the last meeting, and so we could keep it the same. But it'll be contingent upon attorney approval, of course, and in an amount not to exceed $145,400.
The current phone system works on an old copper line. Now I'm going to just speak. Tell me if I'm a kind of a parrot. Am I?
That's the next item.
Huh?
That's the next item.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Disregard. This is just migrating over to Office 365, which will be a big deal to do. There's an annual cost involved in it in the memorandum attachment. So the licensee is annually $65,000 for this.
Travis, could you tell us a little bit? I did read in there that the system we have, or what I thought I understood when I was reading it, the system that we have is safer because it isn't as expansive. I think maybe the way, so it has limitations in what we can do, but it might be safer from like some of the cyber stuff is what I thought I was understanding in one section of it. So what will we, like, how do we think about that when we migrate to, into this new environment? Could it increase the threat risk, or we don't know, and how do we address that?
So your threat risk will increase along with your capabilities. what we're doing is, it's not just me, we have an entire group that is focused on cybersecurity and how to best approach that, those protections. There's a lot of protections that you can put in place. They just require the higher license cost. A lot of people will start at the very basic minimum for Microsoft licensing, and then they learn that they needed these additional conditional access. For most of our employees, we can actually limit the access to their email to just this location, so that a person from Russia or any other country would not even be able to access the account. So we're going to use those kind of protections. The other type of protection is going to be multi-factor. When it is found necessary, if you need to log into these services, you got to hit a button on your phone. Those are all the best practices that we're taking away from others that have gone through bad experiences. We're learning from them. We're going to move forward with a very security conscious process.
When we migrate, how do we protect not just the threat, but then there are documents and things that we want to make sure are secure to make that migration, right? So I'm thinking legal things and stuff like that. So what do we do to make sure that we don't lose things? At least there's got to be some stuff that we definitely don't want to lose. Are we backing it up, or what are we doing so that when we migrate, are we just supposed to people go through things and figure out what's necessary? Because, they're long-term, we're responsible for like the historical representation of what's happened here. So how do we make sure that when we do that, what's in place that's going to help us with that?
So we have a lot of backups currently, and when we move forward, we're going to continue to back up. The migration process does have a risk of data loss. I don't hide that. Though the demos that we've seen with the products that's going to be used to migrate from our current platform to the new platform appear to be very reliable. We haven't heard much about people actually losing content. So we're still going to have what we had. We're just going to shut it down and iceberg it, and then, move forward and ensure that we back up that data properly as well, so that we do have this historical stuff. Now, with this process, we are going into the GovCloud client, so it's actually an environment that's designed for government and all of our wonderful, unique requirements.
That is another question I had. So I know that when residents have come and had concerns about data, the cloud, it was not this data, it was other data that they were worried about going to the cloud and telling us that once it's on a cloud, you don't own it. So is that different if it's governmental? What protects somebody from what we might have stored that people wouldn't want? I guess maybe because we're governmental, maybe everything is kind of public, but I guess that's the other concern, because the cloud sounds like that's very concerning to a lot of people who work with data all the time.
There are valid concerns. There's always risk when you're saving it. Essentially, if you view the cloud as just somebody else's hardware, right? It's just somebody else's computer. And you have to trust that the operators of that system are holding up to their end of their agreements and their SLAs and their security practices. I intend to, all the data that we do push to the cloud, that we're also going to, for a while, maintain an on-site copy, so that if we lose the tenant, we lose the cloud, we still have an on-site copy of our data. And then we're going to push that off to another third party for iceberg storage.
What would prohibit, whoever's doing the cloud from selling, one of the worries was that people's data would be sold. So what would keep the entity we're contracting with for the cloud, is something in our contract going to say that they can't sell that information to another party? It's just, we're contracting with them for the purpose of this service, not so that they can take data and then sell it to somebody else?
So Communication Square is mostly a facilitator to take our data and store it on Microsoft systems with Microsoft agreements. So we're going to be storing our information with many other government organizations on Microsoft servers, owned and controlled by them. There is going to be a privacy statement. They're going to have their privacy policy. We can always forward that on if you want to take a look at that. But again, at the end of the day, you have to trust that they're upholding their privacy statements and their agreements. Cloud is good, cloud is bad. I mean, there's two sides of the story. It is a solution, it's not always the solution. However, moving forward, I think it is probably the best solution for the township.
So you're saying it has more pluses than minuses?
Yes.
And those capabilities outweigh what we have now?
I do believe, professionally, I believe that is the best way to move forward with the township. It's, there's a lot of features that people are asking for that we want to use that we just simply can't do right now. Most of the industry, most of our partners, most of all business email has moved to Office 365. I mean, they are the primary carrier for all business email.
So currently, we're not on a cloud, right? With the one we have right now, we're not on a cloud.
Correct.
And that's really the big difference, is that we're moving to something, right? So if we weren't going to do what we have now and we weren't going to do cloud, we'd still be probably with the same limited ability to interface with other things.
Correct.
Just one more question. What is like the biggest advantage or capability that we could get with the cloud that we don't have now?
So moving with Office 365, there's a lot of different components. Some of them include the ability to share data in a controlled manner with partners, which is something that we keep getting asked for, is the ability to utilize systems like Microsoft Teams, OneNote, well, I'm not going to use SharePoint, but in some of the other features that are available with it. Cloud collaborations where two people can work on the same document at the same time and see each other's edits, those type of services.
Okay, I get it.
So can you give us an example of like something that we're being asked to share that we aren't able to do or we don't have the capability to do?
Any specifics off the top of my head where we want to share files with outside agencies? Not really. I know there's been many times in my department, a couple of others, where it's, hey, can you review this document? Oh, wait, I have to run back to my office and close it before you can open it, or any kind of real-time editing in those particular situations.
So it's more like a technology versus like somebody wants information from one of our departments or something? Like if, I don't know how other things get shared, but that's what I'm trying to understand, like who's asking us to share something, and is that in our best interest always to share it? I don't know.
I guess I would look at it as if let's say we're in an agreement with another township, and we're trying to get the grant together, and we can both work on it at the same time, as opposed to sending a copy and editing. And would that be an example? Or?
That would be an excellent example.
Okay.
Madam Chair, it would be like Debbie when we were talking about working on our PowerPoint, and I say all the time, I would love to use Google Drive if I could, but Travis says no. And so this would allow us to like collaborate on the same document without, having to send it and then save it and then send it back and forth like that.
Sorry, the Comcast proposal, and Mr. Winters, you were correct that we need to get a release from Comcast.
Yes, Comcast did send an email. I did send an email to Travis saying if you want to cancel, say so in writing. Travis did say so in writing, and they sent back an email saying you're released. So everything is in proper form. To stay with Clearrate, I guess.
And do you think this will happen this year, Travis?
Oh, yes. It needs to happen fast.
We may have to rebudget for item number 2 next year, right?
For part of
365.
the Communication Square stuff, yes, possibly, yeah.
Any questions on that? Will you explain it, Travis?
I can try. So right now, we have Clearrate Services, which comes over a T1 line, which is basically like an old school copper phone line that comes into your building, old school technology that we're having challenges with for call quality issues. The original request was to migrate to Comcast services, where they're going to bring in a dedicated fiber connection and then connect through that connector. However, we ran into some roadblocks, some delays, some questions, and it's not working out. So now we're going to go back to our original provider, but rather than using that AT&T, we're taking them completely out of the equation and all the problems that they've given us, and we're going to go over our basic internet connection, which has a really good response time to Clearrate, so the issues of quality shouldn't be a problem. Does that make sense? And it's going to cost us a lot less.
Makes sense. The next item is request is to set the public hearing date of December 6th. We have budget amendment number 14. They were for increasing the postage, because postage increased number 1, and then we had passport processing, late tax notices, postcards. Overall, postage just went up, has gone up. And fire, we have a retiree payout for 2 firefighters who opted to leave the drop program early. Under the recreation fund, we received a senior program grant from DTE. So we have to have that as income and then expenditures. And at the compost site, we had a PTO, which is paid time off payout. Are there any questions on that? We're good? The next item is authorization to seek bids for the nuisance vegetation and cleanup abatement. This is noxious weeds, nuisance vegetation is by law. We can send, and this is one of the biggest issues in the community too, is tall grass. And after June 1st, you can notify the owner of the land, and in 24 hours, if they do not mow it, we can send someone in to mow it. So this is a pass-through cost. We put it on there, correct? Giovanna, you're looking at me funny, is that correct? Yes. Okay. Just want to make sure I'm saying it correctly. So Belinda's seeking proposals for this, and earlier we sought proposals for township mowing and roadside mowing. I'm not sure if it should be separated, but we separate it out. We'll see when we come back to, what the bids come out.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to add that the one thing I was going to work with Ms. Kingsley, if it's okay with the board, is just allow the online submission like we normally do. And we'll do all that when we post it on BidNet, but just if the board's okay with continuing that. We get a lot of responses when we allow for online submission. And of course, those are not via email, they're via the secure bid website that we use.
So will this amount be passed on to their property taxes? Or-
Yes.
Okay. Be added on. Okay.
The next item is request to seek bids for vinyl floor replacement at the fire station headquarters. We'll go out for bid and come up. Chief?
Yeah, Madam Supervisor and Board, I would like to go out to bid for the floor replacement at fire headquarters on Fort Boulevard. It is the original flooring that's in that building, and it's 31 years old. I think it was constructed in 91. It's cracking in several places, and it's worn because the floors are warped because the foundation is shored up completely around that building. And some of those places where you open doors to restrooms, whatnot, it actually scrapes the floor. So we want to correct all of those problems. I'd like to go to bid to see that this happens this fiscal year.
Question? Makes sense to me, Chief.
So one question. So is the foundation stable enough to accept the floor?
Yes, it is. It's just that I think post-construction in 91, I don't know if Stan or Brenda or Doug, somebody that was here then, when that station was built, it looks like they had to shore up completely around that foundation. If you go down in the basement, there are metal posts to keep it from imploding, I guess you might say, because it was moving, because it was built on a
Basically,
aquifer or swamp.
right
basically.
over it. Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
So as a result, those wood floors, some of them over time has come loose, and so there is kind of a wave to some of the spots in the flooring in that building. But that isn't so much the issue. The issue is that this is the original tile flooring that was in this building, and it's time to replace it.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Chief, are there other departments in your area that have those same conditions? Is it just this one fire station?
Yeah, it's just this building, yes.
Okay, and you're asking for a bid to do the whole, is this a main floor you're talking about? Or is this just a room? What is it, a whole main floor?
What it is, I have two main hallways. If you notice, when we have the elections, they come in at
Yes,
main
sir.
hallway that traverses from the north to the south into
Yes,
the
sir.
garage bay. And there's two of those, and there's an adjoining hallway between the two. Now, there's also a restroom on the west side, a unisex, and there is a men's and women's restroom on the east hallway. There's also in my office, there's a tiled area, and there's a bathroom in my office and a closet area. And then what we call our dispatch area, there's a half bath in that area. We have our main vestibule entry area, and then there's also where our basement and attic stairways are at.
So you're just saying all the tiling there? Because
Yes.
what you're describing to me is like the entire building then?
In the administration wing, yes.
Right.
Yes.
On basically the main floor?
Correct.
And this is the one on Fort Boulevard, correct?
Excuse me?
This is the one on Fort
Correct.
Boulevard?
Yes.
Yes. So do you have an estimation, or you don't know how much this will get close to for a budget?
I do have an idea of what it would cost,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking it's going to be in an amount not to exceed $20,000.
Fine with me, thank you.
Thank you. And the final item is
So
to,
can I ask one more question? So,
I'm sorry.
so Chief, when you take care of the administrative wing, there's living quarters or the places where they stay? Like, is the floor fine in the other areas, or is this just where it's worse?
Yeah, in the other areas, we have carpet,
Okay.
and correct me if I'm wrong here, I believe 4 years ago, we replaced the carpet at our headquarters, in the offices, the dormitory area, the lounge area, and the training room.
So at
So
this
the carpet,
point, everything
carpet is
else looks
sufficient.
good?
Yeah,
Okay. And
Yeah,
then this
carpet
floor-
areas are sufficient. The
Okay.
hallways where the towel is are not.
Okay.
And the last item is to accept the proposal of concrete floor treatment and award the bid in the amount of $23,923.
As this project went out to bid, I believe it was first week in October. There were 2 bidders on this, and this is the better bid in my estimation, so I would recommend we accept this bid from, I think is Concrete Floor Finishing Incorporated. This bid is for $23,900 and some odd dollars. And what this will do is we have our garage area. There's 2 walkways on the garage area. They're about 10 feet wide on the north end and on the south end. There's a storage room, we call it our laundry room. There we have our industrial washer in there. There's a bathroom. There's also a tool room and a work area. And off of that we have, but we won't be tiling this area. We use as part of the, how would I call it, the ordinance officers as an emergency clean-off area so they can decon. So it's kind of in that same area. And then we have what we call our flammable liquid storage area, and that has a roll-down door on it. But all of that has been epoxied, and we're just asking for, or the bid is for them to refinish the entire floor. Some of it is peeling and cracking. And I don't know if this was original to the 1991 build. I'm thinking it is. I just have no idea, but it's time to refinish it.
Any question? And is there a contract to be reviewed by the attorney or? No?
Chief, right now, we just have the quote, and you'll be expecting a written contract back.
Okay, I could reach out to the company.
Yeah, I mean, we can do that in our office, but to my knowledge, I have not seen the contract, so I assume Doug has not either.
Do we need it? We need a contract.
What I have right now is just I guess the proposal.
Right.
So it might be easy to turn it into a contract if they want to send over a template. I mean, I don't know exactly what they normally do. If they send something, I can probably try and help you turn it into a contract for them to sign.
Okay, is that something the clerk's office is going to do, or should I do it?
No, I think, well, if you can, I do actually have, I see the actual proposal. I'm not really sure I had the specifications. Maybe are there specs to go with this as well?
Yes.
Maybe if they can email me the specs in the proposal, I can prepare a contract.
Okay.
The warranty too, I'm guessing, right? Is there a warranty? I'm just asking.
Yeah, we can get you all of the bid documents, Doug, I think. I mean, we just don't have a contract. We have their quote and their proposal that we'd like to accept, but of course, we don't have a contract.
If you have the bid documents, that would be helpful too.
Yeah. You can send those over at least, too.
Okay.
Just a quick question. Have we done business with any of the companies we're bidding with for this epoxy floor?
At least not in the fire department. I can't speak for the other departments.
Oh, because, with just about anything, just because it's low, doesn't mean it's going to be the best. I was just trying to get some sort of idea as to whether, say, we've done business with the next highest bidder, something like that, to get something that you know is going to, as opposed to a company that we have no knowledge of.
Correct. We did offer a pre-bid meeting. Both those companies did show up at the pre-bid meeting. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend that meeting that day. However, my rep, Lieutenant Geringer, was there in the building, and the recommendation is primarily due to his observations of the two companies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he also offered up the guy that we're recommending a schedule, because it has to be done in 2 or 3 parts because of the truck traffic on there and then the moving of the equipment. So he had a better grasp, you might say, or understanding of how to do this project as opposed to the second bidder on this project.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Is there any other business? Board updates or?
Madam Chair, I have 2. The first is in regards to the liquor license. Debbie had sent me an email. It looks like we'll get that one back from the Michigan Liquor Control Commission from a restaurant on Washtenaw. So I believe we're at 7. It could be 8, but we'll get that one back. So just trying to figure out what their process is. They're not always the most forthright on how to get it back in a timely fashion, but I got it working. The second one is yesterday, supervisor, the clerk, and I, along with compliance director Kingsley, her assistant Tom Greenwood, and Lori Lutomsky, our new community resource manager, met with Sheriff Clayton, some of his staff, and members from Community Mental Health, along with PATH, which is, I guess, a subgroup in Community Mental Health, to talk about the various homeless encampments we have that are quickly increasing around the township. So I think we all agreed at the outset that the first and foremost goal was to make sure that we did everything we could to assist those folks into getting into a living arrangement that's more conducive for their health and safety. Lori was able to speak with those folks earlier last week and see what other communities are doing for like issues so that we didn't try to reinvent the wheel. We used their best practices. She then took that information, was able to adopt it into a plan that would allow us to work in partnership with CMH, PATH, and the Sheriff's Department to try and get those various people living in those encampments help and assistance. But yet, when the encampments occurred on township property, to try and remove those encampments in a safe and humanely fashion so that we were helping folks. So I think we came up with a plan yesterday. Everybody left the meeting, I think, on the same page that we're going to do everything we can to help these folks move into permanent or at least semi-permanent housing, especially with winter quickly approaching. Figure out how to work cooperatively with the state as well to try and get them assistance in that regard. But so just as an update, we are working on it. We have met with all those folks, and I think we have a plan in place to move forward so that we're being helpful. So I can answer questions if you have them.
That liquor license you spoke of, that's at the place that used to be Big Boy?
No, across the street at the China Palace.
Okay.
They had, excuse me, they had it, Debbie, you got to help me, or Jimmy can help me. They had it revoked a couple of years ago for some issues they had, not following the policies and procedures of the Liquor Commission at the state level. They appealed. The appeal was denied by the state. The only way that they could get back in front of the state was if the local Liquor Commission, in this case Ypsilanti Township, gave them their local approval to seek it back from the state. Jimmy, Debbie, and I met with them 2 or 3 times, probably more than that, actually. And we just weren't comfortable giving that approval. There was a lot of questions about ownership and past issues with sales and violating MLC practices. So we didn't give it. They weren't able to go back before the state. So I followed up with a representative from the Liquor Commission in Lansing. And that license was still there. And it was sitting there. It wasn't going anywhere, but it wasn't coming back here at the time. And I just asked, well, it came out of our quota. Since we did not increase our quota at the last census, could we have that license back? We're not gaining anything. We're just retrieving what was rightfully ours from the 2010 census. They looked it up, they found it, and said yes, they had no problem with it. They did show another license of ours that was still out, kind of in a nowhere land, and that was the one that we had talked about a few years ago to possibly use at Green Oaks. We'll also get that one back. So I think we were at 6, and we'll actually move back to 8. So it's 7 or 8, but I think it's 8. So that's kind of where that 8th one came back from, John, was out on Washtenaw.
Any other updates?
It did come before the board, so the board, the liquor committee recommended not granting that license, and then we voted as a board to not grant it. So we kind of meet, and then we bring back the recommendation. So as a board, I think we unanimously voted to not return it to them. And then I'd also just like to say thank you to everyone who's working on taking care of the encampments in a humane and dignified way, and also appreciate that there's cooperation with other entities, because what we don't want to see happen is that we take an action that then impacts another community. Otherwise, they're just going to be moving around. I know we can't guarantee that, but I think it does help if we're communicating with other agencies at the county level. I think that helps. We have a better chance of not necessarily pushing a problem somewhere else if we're cooperating. So I appreciate the work that's been done on our behalf.
Yeah, and I would just tell you, I didn't know Lori before she came to us at that meeting where she was named to that pilot position. But over the last 2 weeks, it has become, at least to me, extremely clear how knowledgeable and helpful she is, but also how well-respected she was yesterday in the room from her former peers with CMH. That helped the process go very smoothly and quickly, and otherwise we'd be sitting here trying to figure out what to do. So in 2 weeks, we've already, or less, I don't know exactly when we did it, but we've already gained great value out of it.
Any other updates? For the, from last week's meeting on Wood Glen and Nash, so the Sheriff's Department has submitted charges for those 2 addresses. Well, Wood Glen for sure. They've also issued a notice of violation notice from the Sheriff's Department regarding some of the activity that's been going on there, and we often use the reports that's been submitted to the prosecutor's office for padlock. So I do know that the notice was also sent to the owner of the property as well. and we got a email from West Willow about some possible shots fired, and they had people actually in the vicinity, so that helped a lot too. They couldn't find any evidence of any, but they were there, and there was another issue that was going on. So the residents did email Shane, they called, and they CC'd us. So there wasn't as many ordinance violations from a rental perspective on that, but there's an opportunity that perhaps whatever, if the prosecutor authorizes charges on the cases, then it could possibly be a padlock for one of them. So I just want people to know that there was a reaction to what was said at the meeting, and I'm glad that they were also present in the West Willow area. I don't know about traffic citations or any of that for the speeding, which was a big concern for the residents, but I did want to update the board on that. I also forwarded out to the board the vermin, AKA rat map, and the treatment of it. And as we explained at the meeting at the county with the sheriff's department, and the director of mental health was there. She was really nice too, very kind, and their staff was really very nice as well. Vermin is a big issue in the field. Michigan Avenue, they had to treat aggressively because of all the burrows that were seen, in that area. So they haven't looked at Liberty Square. They did, Sugarbrook was another area around the what's it called? It's a sound wall, like, that goes from West Willow up to Sugarbrook, and they've also had to do some aggressive treatment there, and they feel good about the success of it. But there, if you look at the map that was sent around, it was a pretty red map. It was heated, kind of. So, but I'm really thankful that we are trying to be proactive with, this is a public health and safety issue, and being in a field, in a tent, with food, and no bathroom facilities, it's really concerning from a public health and safety standpoint as well. It was a very good meeting. We have a process in place, and PATH, they were not there, but they sound like a very good organization. And the process that we are following is what the city of Ann Arbor and the city of Ypsilanti does as well. They like to locate tent encampments on bus line and where there are trees. So the city of Ann Arbor, they've developed a lot of the properties, and I read about the city of Ypsilanti. So the more undeveloped area you have, the more locations that you could have. I think we've had them in the past, we just didn't see them, which is another goal of the people who live in the tents, and PATH, to be in an area that's not real visible. The one in Liberty Square and Harris Road were the two, and Michigan Avenue, ordinance department received several calls on that, or we wouldn't have known. There has been a couple fire department runs for smoke because they burn wood, and it's just, I really wish we had, affordable, not even affordable housing in general. There's a 4 or 5 year voucher wait list right now in Washtenaw County, and as prices go up, it's just pushing, people out. There's not any really affordable housing being built. So it's just an overall big, and it's not just Ypsilanti Township, it's not just Washtenaw County. It is throughout our country that people are having to live like this. It's just in the cold weather we're very concerned about, freezing, and it's very sad. Some people choose to live that way, but most people don't. is what they said at the meeting. So it was a good meeting, very good meeting. Once we give notice, so we posted Liberty Square, and we gave them a deadline, November 14th, I think, to, remove their stuff. We notified PATH, and PATH will work with them on relocation. And they'll go back out on the 14th, the ordinance department, inspect. If it has not been, the stuff has not been removed, then the 15th, the contractor will go in and remove this stuff and keep it at the compost site. And that's, like I said, that's the same process that other communities use as well. Oh, we did learn that Washoe County Parks has the same issue, and that the Parks Department actually goes in and cleans up the encampment. I don't know if they post it like we do, but, so, I mean, it's going on throughout the county. Any other updates? All right.
I'll just add or remind everyone on the board and here tonight that the clerk's office is open this Saturday from 8 to 4. So if anyone asks about coming in, we'll be open then for voting. And lunchtime during this week and then Monday and Tuesday next week.
All right, let's adjourn the meeting at 6:37.